with social media, it has never been a better time to start your own practice.
And now there's even like companies that will set up everything for you, right? It's kind of like law firm in a box type situation.
Hold on, my brain hurts right now. This is
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 5 of Barside. It's the first episode of the new year, and we've got a lot to talk about. So, why don't we kick things off with a discussion about billable hours, CC? Recently, somebody shared something on LinkedIn, and tell us about it.
Yeah, so Emily Logan Stedman posted on LinkedIn about how she approaches billable hours at the start of every year. And I feel like anyone who has worked in the firm environment, you know that feeling of resetting your hours come Jan 1st, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I have to like make sure that I work at a pace that's enough to get my bonus for the next year.
That's right.
I was like, Matt, do you feel this?
I have such PTSD from this, like in a very joking sense. I'm like, there's a joke I make on the internet where it's like 12 o'clock midnight, like Happy New Year's, and then 12:01. Where are your hours? Why are they so low this year?
That is PTSD because I do recall, especially if I took vacation, end of December to January, every time I come back and seeing that like 0% and I'm supposed to be at, I don't know, like 2% or something, it would give me the biggest panic attack. So
I feel that in my bones. Ugh.
So Emily, she said that as a partner, her all-in target for annual hours is 2,400. And she says, yes, that's a lot. You can tell that she's already talked about this online quite a bit because she already says, I feel the reactions coming already. And I feel like that kind of where you share something and you automatically know what people are going to say about it is such an extremely online reaction that you only have once you've spent enough time online.
You've just been butchered. You've been butchered in the comment section. You're like, you're putting up your shield and your sword. And you're like, all right, let's go to battle today on the billable hour.
Yep, preemptively.
The billable hour always gets people going. And I know Emily, and she's such a great, kind person. And I love that she made partner this year. And I think that this is such a timely topic. 2,400 hours is insane to me. I don't know how you all feel about it, but I did 2,000 as an associate, and I was like, wow, I don't want to do this again.
But that was probably billable, right?
Right, it was.
Right. So how she broke it down was the billable target is actually 1,750. And then the 650 is non-billable stuff. So, firm investment, personal, like biz dev, all that stuff. And I actually saw that amount, and it's fairly medium to low for Biglaw, I would actually say. Like, I do know some firms where partner billable expectations are still like 1,900. Like you don't really get much of a grace from being partner.
That's fair. When I heard the 2,400, I immediately thought it was like hardcore insurance defense, because that's where you see those numbers, right? Like because there's just such a volume. There's such a volume. There's so much going on. There's so much discovery. You're managing a caseload of like 200 cases, whatever it may be. So that's what I thought. But to your point, like that breakdown, that's manageable. That's certainly manageable.
Matt, what's the difference between insurance defense hours and like Biglaw hours? Because I think we talked about this
right now.
I want to do this right now because you're the expert on insignificant law. So tell us more about the difference.
You just had to fit it in. You just wanted to fit that in.
I had to slide it in. Yeah.
I respect that. So insurance defense, it is quite a volume. It is quite a volume. You're doing a lot more generally, right? There could be certain kinds of defense work that you're doing that's like construction defect where you only have like 10 or 12 cases. But if you're doing true like defense work where it's referred by a carrier, it'd be like 100 cases. So like your billables are generally higher. Also the rates are lower, so they expect higher billables. It's a margin thing, right? So you're billing more. You're billing more. And granted, it's actually easier to bill because in any given day, you could have 20 hours worth of billable work. And so like, all right, getting 10 is easy because I'm actually behind. And there's also in insurance defense, there's a lot of more traveling. There's more court time than traditionally than Biglaw. That being said, there are some firms potentially that value bill, which is not right, where they'll bill a little bit more based on the value they provide to the client. I've heard that before. Ethically, I'm not going to speak to that. but I've seen that in a defense kind of market, and that's what I've seen is the difference between defense work generally and Biglaw. It's much more of a volume game, so more billables.
That's really interesting. I don't know if in Biglaw people build for their travel. I didn't travel for my cases.
Cece, did you bill for travel?
Yeah, if I was going out to do like witness interviews, like that's not something I'm doing for fun. I'm not like going to Long Island for fun. So yeah, of course that's billed.
Shout out to Long Island.
Shout out to Long
We're not
Island.
going there for fun.
CC, I don't know if you know, I went to high school in Long Island. It was a great
Oh.
place. Great place. Great place. But yeah, no, I wouldn't. I probably wouldn't go there either after I left. But okay, so 1750 is the billable requirement.
Sure.
That's to me a lot more reasonable than the 2400. And maybe I should have read this before we recorded. but I thought it was 2400 billables.
That's what you would expect. Like you're not going to expect UC 2400. Like my billable requirement was when I was like one of my first firms, I think was 2400. It was 200 a month, right? 2400. Yeah. So, yeah. And that was majority a defense firm. So that's where that experience comes from. So when I hear 2400, I'm like, oh, cool. First year associate days or second year.
So it's interesting to me because I want to get into the comments. There seems to have been a salty comment that I'll read.
Oh, yeah, I love this one. And to be fair, this is after Emily went into a little bit more depth about what her 2400 overall hours that she was aiming for was. And she was like, for January, 21 working days. So she's going to aim for 10.2 hours a day, which is comprised of 7.2 billable hours and 3 other, like non-billable hours, which I think that's fine. That seems totally reasonable to me, but the salty comments, they made me laugh.
I missed these. What were they?
So I love salty comments, which is why I fast forwarded to that part. I'll read it out loud. It says, I realize you have a goal, but it's laughable that you're going to work 7.3 hours a day straight. Hard to believe, then pass it off to a client. Really? Then the aspect of allocation. Good luck. But if I was a client, I would hand you an audit notice.
Oh, okay. So they're saying they're fluffing the bills up.
Yeah. They say they can't believe billing that much in a day.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
It's so easy to bill it. My wife, like literally my wife will have like 50 contracts she has to review in a day. And I'm like, she probably bills less than like she could bill 10 hours a day every single day because of the volume of work that she has. Hold on, my brain hurts right now. This is frustrating.
I also would like to see this person talk to the Walktel associates, right? And just like listen to how much they bill. And I don't know, would they just call them all liars? Because, I know Walktel associates who have billed like 4,000 hours in a year.
12.6 attention to discovery.
Exactly.
14.5 attention to salty comments. Like that's what it is.
That's what it is. And I also wonder if it's hard to imagine doing 7.2 billable hours every single day consistently. And I guess I'll give them that, like just to do it without missing a day. But as we all know, like this is bumpy. It's like some days you literally will bill 14 hours. Other days it'll be lighter. And so it averages out. And I agree. Like I have seen, before I worked at a big law firm, I would say, yeah, I'd be skeptical. But then I've seen people just essentially live in the office. Like it was kind of crazy to see. And Matt, you probably have a lot of stories. If people are being required to work to bill for 2,400 a year, then that's probably the same there too.
Yeah. I mean, like, listen, there was, to Cece's point, there are days that, and these are true hours where it would be like, I've got a hearing in the morning. I got to drive out to the court. This is obviously like pre-COVID. I drive to the courthouse. I go to the hearing. I leave the hearing. I drive back. I actually have a deposition in the afternoon. I drive out to Miami. I take the deposition. The deposition's another 5 or 6 hours. I prep for the deposition. In that day, you could be billing 10, 11, 12 hours. Those are real hours. Those are stressful days. Those are not fun days. But those are, especially with litigation, it is a reality. Like even presently right now, like I could do discovery. I could take multiple depositions in a day if I had to, like short depositions. And there you go. I hit 7 no questions asked. Real hours. And again, it may not be fun days to be billing 10, 11 hours, but people do it. And I'm not condoning like this constant overworking nature of the law. That's not what I'm preaching. All I'm saying is, mathematically speaking, it is 150%, speaking mathematically, possible to hit those hours in a day, no problem.
And that's like, you're talking about doing the work itself. And I want to also unpack this other part of Emily's post, which is the non-billable part. I last year I did this interview with an anonymous partner at one of these big firms, and I said, "Hey, like, tell me about like what you do. Like, I know partners, but no one's ever sat down with me to break down like what do you do on a day-to-day basis." And he described a whole series of things he had to do, and a very small part of it was the actual legal work. It was all this other stuff, including business development, but including like, I don't know, like just admin stuff. And so
Sure.
like if you're, I guess my question for both of you, I don't know if you all know this, but like how do partners do it all? Like how do you fit that additional stuff on top of like the 2400 that you have to do in insurance defense, or the 2000 something at a big firm, or I don't know how many hours the Walktail partners are billing, but how do you do all that stuff on top?
I don't know. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know. All right, like it's a lot. It's certainly a lot. I can only imagine and that's why Alex and we always make these partner jokes, right? Like, and now I am one. It's like I'm like the villain of my own story. But truthfully, some of these partners are working potentially twice as hard as their associates. Not only are they trying to hit an hour requirement, but they're trying to build a book of business and maintain that book, and deal with collections, deal with the admin associated with the book. I mean, there's plenty of clients that require extra things in order to remain a client. And then you have your seminars, your conferences, your firm events that you have to attend. Short answer is, I don't know. I really don't know how they do it.
I mean, I think the answer is that some do it and are very tired. And this is actually the part that opened my eyes a lot to what a big law firm structure was like. The partners who realize that the billable hours aren't actually where their value are typically the partners who have a better life and work-life balance. And they're the ones who say, you know what, is my target 1750? Cool. I'm going to do 1200 and I'm going to spend way more time on this other stuff. And if my referrals bring in more money for the firm, if my, I just have like way more client development, are they going to fire me for for missing my billable hours target? And the answer is no, they do not fire you for missing your billable hours target. So I actually kind of always think billable hours is a weird system, because for associates it makes a lot of sense, but for junior partners in particular, they still operate under that I'm an associate, I need to bill the correct number of hours mentality, when it's actually better to let that part drop and then focus on the how do I bring more value and revenue to the firm, even at the expense of this thing that my entire career I've been told that I need to do.
Preach. Can you imagine being in a situation where you're like, you brought in millions of dollars of business and they're like, listen, CC, I'm sorry, you were actually 4 hours away from target?
They don't. Yeah, they don't do that. That's the thing. That's what I realize is that, partner malfeasance can be so bad and they still don't get fired.
Well, let's talk about, remember the two partners formerly of Lewis Brisbois? That's a good example. They were true rainmakers, and it only took them leaving for them to finally, the bad information about those individuals to come out. I mean, exactly to your point. Money, unfortunately, money talks. Money talks, certainly.
It's so interesting too, because when you come up as a lawyer, you think that your value is tied to the billable hour. You see how much you get billed out for per hour. You see how much the firm makes on your work. And suddenly one day, if you're successful at that, you have to suddenly switch over to a different way of thinking, where bringing in clients might be more important than everything that you've been trained for. And you have all these competencies. You understand the systems of the firm. You know everything. And then suddenly it's like, hey, go do this thing that you've never done before.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to give you value. And that's crazy. It's almost like hide the ball in career development. Nobody really talks about it when you're a junior, right?
No, because they have no incentive to. right? Like to keep you weak is to keep you tied to them. To give you the tools to be strong is to give you the tools to potentially leave. And I know that's kind of like a toxic mindset. And I'm not saying all partners are like that, because I know plenty of great partners who are great mentors, but there are some partners who do think that to make associates strong is to be a threat.
It's true. And then you're a non-equity partner, you have no book of business, or at least no portable book of business, and you're stuck at a firm forever. And if they say you're leaving because they're tired of you working there or for whatever reason, what are you going to do, right? What are you going to do? You're stuck.
Yeah, you go somewhere else, and I hate this term, but be a service partner somewhere else.
That's exactly right.
That's interesting because, like if this is the way things work, if the value is in bringing clients and, maybe the hours are commoditized, like why do firms still operate this way? And are there firms that are operating differently? And I know that there's a lot of articles proclaiming the death of the billable hour, but it remains. I remember when I first got into legal tech, I was like, oh, technology will change this. This will go away, but it hasn't. And why do you think that is?
Cece, do you bill hours, or do you at your firm?
I tend to not. No, I tend to do fixed fee, and do hours only if it's something that is like nebulous. Yeah, like a call every once in a while. Like I'm not gonna come up with a fixed fee for that. But I think seeing how inefficient the billable hour system was and how much I hated it and I didn't think it made sense did encourage me to move away from the billable hour system myself at my own firm.
That makes sense. I'm doing both. I have a fixed fee. It depends on the deals. I'm doing fixed fee, and then litigated matters, and then certain other matters I'm doing hourly. And the problem I have is it still unfortunately makes sense for certain kinds of things. Like for litigation, it's hard to flat fee things because litigation is so unpredictable. Now that being said, in my fractional practice, and very similar to CC's practice, shout out to CC. You're here, so it's a weird shout out. I'm just pointing at you at this point. Shout out to you. You can flat fee a lot of things. I could flat fee a privacy policy, a handbook, terms of use, and very transactional nature things. And that's the problem with the industry too, is we haven't found a really good way on certain kinds of matters. And again, generally it's litigation. So like I've seen companies flat fee stages of litigation, and I've heard it isn't fun. I've heard it ends up never really making sense for the attorney. Obviously makes sense for the company. So that's the problem that we're as an industry. Like, yes, the billable hour is inefficient, but unfortunately for certain kinds of things, we're stuck with it for now, hopefully.
There's a really interesting startup that I think is related to all this, which is it's a company called Laurel, and they do timekeeping software. They're a timekeeping software company. But I remember when I met them, I said, what's your value add? And they said something I'd never heard of, which was, we're going to use AI to help these firms figure out, are there patterns among your hourly billed matters where you can get the data to create a flat fee?
Cool.
I don't know if it actually worked. This was a conversation from a few years ago, but the concept is pretty cool, right? If you can use data from your associates, your counsel, your partners, like putting into a matter, you could probably see some trends and you can probably project some of that uncertainty away.
Yeah, I think so. I talked to a lot of attorneys on Biglaw for my book, and one of the topics we did talk about was the billable hour. Can it be replaced? What are alternatives around it? And yeah, Matt, to your point, people were like, for litigation, it's a little bit harder, but these firms who have done the same types of matters over and over, they have the data. Like, they theoretically have the data sitting there, and they could calculate, like, this type of complaint, this much at issue. How much does it typically cost to get to motion to dismiss, for example? Like, they could do that. They just don't, because as we know, there's not a lot of incentives for firms themselves to get more efficient, especially if their revenue model isn't broken.
I think that's fair. There are certain, and as I speak this out loud, there are certain things that you're right, with the data, you could flat fee. Like, let's call it, using the defense is easier. A complaint has been filed. It's a case that this firm, that's all they do. It's all they do. They have an answer that's more or less form, with some affirmative defenses that they tweak. You could, if there is a matter code for it, you just like click a button. It's like auto 5Gs, whatever it may be. Maybe it's like very complex. That'd be great. That actually leads itself a little bit to value billing, though, right? That it goes to the and that I don't know. We could talk about that on another podcast. This concept of value billing. We're not necessarily billing for your time. You're billing for the value you're providing to a client, and to a point, it makes sense. There's just a lot of countervailing arguments to it. I don't want to like fight with myself on here, but it makes sense.
Yeah, but before like 1960s, fixed fee, flat fee projects was the norm in the legal industry. Billable hours, yeah, billable hours is like a relatively new evolution in all of this. So we could go, I mean, we can go back. Now I feel like I'm in Lost. We gotta go back.
We gotta go back to the island.
The people who are billing you by the hour are also the ones telling you how many hours it takes. That's like a
It shouldn't take you more than 6 hours. I think that's a fair point. Yeah. But I feel like the matters have gone. Oh my god, I sound so bad because I'm like defending the billable hour like a monster. But my issue is this, and I keep coming from this litigator perspective. As a litigator, if a matter is fairly complex or things come outside of the norm, right? For example, a new issue arises and now there's motion practice back and forth. How do I, if we are just talking on a flat fee basis, how do I handle that? Am I flat feeing the motions? Maybe that makes sense. Or is it that it's a flat fee hybrid? Like what? I guess like where can you do this? Can you have a flat feed litigated matter complex out of the norm of what you're traditionally handling?
I think so you can, because I know there was this former Paul Weiss partner who opened up her own firm, and her entire firm is no billable hour. Like, and she does complex like litigation, has like represents like the NFL. Like this is kind of I don't know, it's a new frontier, and she like does not give up the complexity of her matters, but that's kind of her thing. She was like, I don't think the billable hour is good for like women in the workplace, and I created my own thing.
You guys are like radicalizing me on this podcast right now. Like as we're going, everyone's listening. They're like watching me, like slowly the gears are turning. Like, oh my gosh, maybe I should get rid of the billable hour for my litigation matters. Which, listen, if it makes sense, I'll do it. If you're a client listening, you didn't hear this, but
I mean, this is super cool because I think it ties into something that I've noticed, which is like the rise of the independent lawyer. You mentioned CZ earlier, like firms have unique incentive structures, and then one occasionally you might have someone come along from a big firm who says, I'm going to open my own shop and do things differently. I'm going to only bill flat fee. And this brings me to an interesting post this week from Carolyn Elephant, who was the creator of MyShingle.com, authored Solo by Choice. She's a big advocate and writer about solo practitioners, and she highlighted this trend of people leaving firms to start their own solo practices. And the cool part was she referenced the three of us. She tagged the three of us, so we were all mentioned. First, I was like, why am I tagged? I don't run a firm. I'm a legal tech like meme lord. But it's because I wrote about the rise of the independent lawyer in my Substack. So she highlights this pattern. Now I'll talk a little bit about this post, right? And you can all check it out on LinkedIn. Carolyn Elephant. She said, steadily increasing trend on LinkedIn. Former Biglaw attorney turned law firm owner in a bio line. And she with some self-awareness, she says, I've made the same call before, but it seems like this trend has real traction this time around. And are we at a tipping point? And it led to a bunch of comments that I'll kind of walk through really quickly. And I'd love to get both of your responses on this, because you are all out there in the field, like running your own firms.
Field, like it's Pokemon.
In the virtual field, yeah. Yeah, it's like Pokemon.
In the tall grass. Yeah.
In the tall grass. Because a lot of these LinkedIn discussions can get really abstract, and I'm guilty of this too, very theoretical. Somebody said this rise of AI will enable more lawyers to go solo. Somebody else said, working at a law firm or big law is kind of like a residency, like the way that doctors have it. You work at a place for a while, then you go out and do your own thing. And there were a lot of comments about how going solo gave them the flexibility to work the way they want and also enable their creativity, which I think is part of this trend. And so it seemed like there was a good amount of people supporting this trend, or anecdotal evidence that this is a real trend. But I am curious from both of you, like what do you think? What do you think about? Is there a law firm to solo pipeline that's gaining traction?
Can I just quickly say I'm not a Biglaw attorney, and I want to make sure that that's known. I commented on there. If you're gonna talk shit about me on Fishbowl or Reddit, I swear to God, I didn't tell her I'm a Biglaw attorney. I swear, don't fight me.
I think she said Big Law just as a general category, and the fact is that she thought you were ex Big Law, which is hilarious. Um, but it's like I think the post is really about
Yeah.
law firms.
Yeah, Matt, you just have big law energy.
Big Law
What
Energy,
does that
Matt.
mean? What
No,
does that mean?
take it how you will, but you have big law energy, Matt.
12.5. Attention to Biglaw energy. Everything's a watchable bill. That's all
Your
I'm gonna tell
newsletter is called Point Two, Matt.
Fuck. Oh no.
0.2 hours.
Do I have Biglaw energy? It's like that.
Or insignificant law energy. What's
Is that
better?
worse?
I think I have
don't know.
Insignificant Law Energy. That's me.
I don't know. I know what this episode's going to be called after this.
We're gonna have
nailed
to.
it.
I think we nailed it. I think we nailed it. But okay, so what do you
Sure.
think, as somebody who's both of you who've followed this pattern? Is this like kind of a unique situation for yourselves, or do you also see this as a pattern among people you know?
Yeah, so I do think I have noticed more big law lawyers than I would think open up their own shop. I generally believe that, especially if you do go to big law, you tend to want the straight and narrow. You do want like I read this term in a book recently, but the laminated transom into adulthood. And I was like, this is a beautiful phrasing.
The what?
Laminated transom. So like a transom is like a board that connects two things. So if you have a laminated transom, it's like a easy glide into adult life. Yeah, this author was using it with respect to like consulting after college. Like it is not for people who are passionate. It is for people who want a laminated transom into adulthood.
Like socks on, slide through.
Exactly. And I think big law is like the laminated transom from law school into your legal career. So I'm actually a little bit shocked. I remember when I was, I don't know, a second or third year, and there was this one junior associate who immediately after his clerkship had worked for maybe 1 year at a big law firm, opened up his own shop. And I was like, what? I know, I was shocked. And I think part of it was a jealousy that I had such imposter syndrome as like a second year, third year. And this like second year was just like, nope, I'm ready. I'm ready to do appellate litigation. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because I think he like clerked for an appeals court and then afterwards was like, I'm ready. Yeah. And I remember thinking, and I was like, will I ever feel that way? Does anyone ever feel that way? But it is weird because, I mean, it might not happen in your second year, but I do think there comes a point where you're like, I think I understand substantively all that needs to happen. And now the difficult part is all the other part of partnership that they don't tell you about, right? It's client development. It's like getting the administrative operational stuff. It's kind of all these logistics that you've spent so long just relying on the firm structure for that. Do you really want to figure it out? And I think for a lot of people, the answer is no. But I think legal tech has increasingly made the operational side of owning your own firm easier. And now there's even like companies that will set up everything for you, right? It's kind of like law firm in a box type situation.
100%. I couldn't agree with that exactly. That point more than anything, because like I opened up my shop and I think our expenses are probably very similar. To open up a law firm, a solo shop, is like nothing. The expenses are very cheap. I think both of, do you use Clio? Shout out to Clio if you're listening to this. This is not sponsored, but if you want to call us after this, let us know. So I use Clio. Clio is pretty cheap. Malpractice insurance is pretty cheap, especially as a solo. Westlaw or Lexis, it's a little expensive, but still it's per seat. So it's not that expensive on an individual basis. And then from there, we have all these, you can have a virtual office, virtual phone number. It's actually very cheap. Your website is really cheap. And then after that, these AI tools and this legal tech that have just come up have made things infinitely more manageable. E-discovery, AI tools for e-discovery, or legal tech that does doc gen, that'll create these templates for you and templatize your agreements so you can move faster, better, more efficiently. It has made opening up a firm so easy. You're right. It used to be like you got to get that office, that really nice office building or that really nice space. You have to get the paralegal. You have to get this. You have to have all these things. And that concept of overhead, which people still can't really wrap their minds around, that overhead is so cheap, was the big impediment, I think. Also, so to kind of go back a second, I've talked to a lot of attorneys on two different, like, I guess, categories of practice. One is in-house, and the in-house attorneys, a lot of them are going solo, and kind of like what me and Cece are doing, this kind of fractionalized general counsel role, because it's easy. They kind of understand the business. They've figured out the margins. Maybe their first client is their company that they're leaving. I've heard that before. And then the other one I'm seeing is attorneys that don't have actually massive books of business are leaving. Because once you reach a certain threshold of business, the issue isn't making money. The issue is maintaining the money and maintaining the practice. And I hear that problem from a lot of people where they're like, yeah, I could leave, but I have to have like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people working this book of business, or else clients are not getting the level of service they deserve. So I'm seeing that. So again, these groups of people that I'm seeing are going solo and are former in-house and people with business, but not enough to need like an army of folks to work that book.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the trends that we've been talking about have to do with doing the legal work, whether it's legal research and managing your practice.
Sure.
I think there's also changes to how you acquire clients. And this is what I wrote about about the independent lawyer in my newsletter, which was there's two trends, right? On the buyer side, probably led by insurance companies and legal ops, clients are becoming more savvy about how they choose firms to work with. And these are corporate clients, but we talked earlier about the incentive structure of existing firms and how hard it is to change. Well, what happens if you have a new player, a new entrant who isn't encumbered by those same incentives? They can deliver things like flat fees and more value. So I think that there's more competition coming because the clients are becoming more sophisticated. And then second, and this is a topic near and dear to my heart, with social media, like you have the ability to have independent lawyers not need to get on the American Lawyer, get in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal to reach so many potential clients and to connect with people. And all of these things are happening at once, which I find super fascinating. I remember a story from when I was clerking. I heard there was a like very very similar to you, Cece. Like there was somebody who started their own firm right out of the clerkship, and it was because he had the confidence from clerking and understanding the courtroom, and that's how it always was. But so few people had that expertise in the courtroom, so it was rare. But now, because we recognize that client acquisition is so important, that bringing in business is so important, and we have all of these easier ways to do that, I feel like all of these trends like point in the direction of it has never been a better time to start your own practice or to go solo or to do fractional work. And I think maybe I'm surrounded by people like both like you two and some others. Like I see it everywhere. I see everyone going solo or doing something more independent. And it's just very cool for me to see as somebody on the innovation, on the tech side. It's a very interesting trend that I'm just going to pay close attention to.
Yeah. I also think the fact that lawyers and law students are now able to more openly talk about their outside of work interests has also helped a lot, because I do think finding community in your outside of law interests does then lead to befriending people who actually do have legal needs, right? And like whatever it is that you're interested in. Maybe it is like tech, maybe it's like, I don't know, like Fortnite games. Like there's just so many things that now there's money behind, but not a lot of historical legal expertise. And one of the reasons that me and my law partner set up the firm was, we have a lot of content creator friends, a lot of artist designers, like people who are creative and like do a lot of things and do have cash flow, but we are the only lawyers that they know. And to be the only lawyer that someone knows, that's really powerful. So the more I think that lawyers are also willing to step out and, I don't know, like run marathons, do something like join other communities. They will probably soon find that they are the only lawyer that this community knows, and that gives them a huge market advantage if they do want to go solo.
100% right. I have a friend of mine. This is before like the internet. I don't say before the internet. He is not that old. Sorry if you're listening to this. Wow, I just took a just catching strays left and right, man. I'm sorry. So I won't use his name. He knows it is. So this person really likes beer. A lot of people like beer, but he liked brewing beer, and he would go to these beer conferences, microbreweries, and ended up being exactly what Cece's talking about. He was the lawyer there. Oh, I know so-and-so. So-and-so brews really good beer, but he works at that firm. He was a Biglaw attorney and ended up getting a whole niche practice in this space. It elevated him up the firm, other clients as well, and then took it and went with a partner and started up a hybrid kind of shop. And that is exactly how he did it. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't like, oh, hey, I'm going to be the beer guy. I think he just happened to become the beer guy. And that's a very good point. And there's now so many of these niches that just come out of nowhere. Again, CC, to your point, like gaming attorneys, like I have a friend that also does that, goes to all the gaming conferences just because he loves to play video games. And he has become an attorney for creators on Twitch and folks that are making so much money now streaming. It's a whole new space for him. And he's doing very complicated legal work for these individuals. And he's like, I started this because I like playing COD. And now COD has led to all of this. So it's 100% true. That resonates with me. Unfortunately, my interests are talking to lawyers. So I don't know what to do, guys. I'll figure it out.
Could be the like legal ethics firm for lawyers. I know that there are like specific firms that help lawyers with legal ethics.
Not me. I'm ethical. Everyone listening to this, clients, I'm ethical. But please, no.
I think actually referrals, you're building a huge referral engine could be valuable.
Yeah.
I know a story about a few stories about people on Twitter who have just developed reputations as a specific practice. They have a specialty in specific practice. Yeah. So you know what we're referencing. Yeah. Specific practice areas, and as you post about it, if everyone else is a lawyer, maybe they'll know you as that lawyer in that particular jurisdiction or state or whatever in that specialty, and then that's how the referrals come through. And that's not something I would have imagined as a path. But if you got a lot of lawyer friends, maybe that's the path for you.
And jokes aside, that's where a lot of business has been coming from. And like really substantial businesses come from an attorney I have one attorney, he's awesome. If you're listening to this, I am sorry. And he reads my tweets. That always gives me great pause if you follow me on Twitter, for obvious reasons. But he reads my tweets and we connected, and he's super cool. Company is fantastic. And I'm hoping to start doing business. And we just started this conversation that came through Twitter of all places. So exactly right. Attorneys are great referral sources. I'm just trying to make myself feel better because that's like my market is just like making jokes to attorneys all day. So thank you guys for being my therapist today on the podcast.
Well, you're the test subject. We'll see how things go for you before we do anything else.
I'm catching strays left and right today, guys. Come on.
Hey man, New Year. You skipped last week's episode, Matt. That's why.
I know. I watched the clips from it, and I feel really bad because it was such a good discussion. Thank you guys for rallying with while I was billing hours.
Well, you were billing hours being an independent attorney, following the trend. So we have established that this is a trend, and I think that's something to watch. And between that and the billable hour, which is not going anywhere, I think that there's going to be huge opportunities. So I love hearing about your stories of like what you both are seeing, because it's I'm in my kind of tech bubble here.
You want to join us? Do you want to join?
No.
Wait, Alex, but you used to have a solo practice. He used to be us, Matt.
He did.
Yeah, I don't really talk about it very much, but I did have a solo practice. I closed it because I made no money. Well, a lot of reasons I closed it. But I made so little money. My expenses were greater than my income, but it was not something I ever planned to do. I just ended up, so I left Biglaw, and I was like, oh God, like I hated my job so much. I'm gonna go to a smaller firm. Smaller
Mhm.
firm didn't work out, and I was like, I'll go solo. But I remember like I always knew I had to do something entrepreneurial, and I knew because I was like very early on, I realized I was not a good fit for big law or big company. And I remember because like I was being paid pretty well. And no matter how I ran the numbers, I knew that I would take a huge pay cut if I left to do something on my own.
Sure.
So I told myself, hey, let's like I gotta hold out to the bonus. I gotta hold out to the bonus. And I was like, oh, I want to quit. I want to quit. So what I did was I actually, and I haven't really talked about this publicly, but I tried to find ways to manipulate myself into keeping on. One of the things I did
Like making
was
deals. Yeah,
was
I feel that.
was like I was like, okay, how much money am I making every day by staying at this job like one more day? Like I had the spreadsheet of like this is so embarrassing. I had the
It's
spreadsheet
really
of like
embarrassing.
how many days I've been working there and how many days it is to 1 year to 2 years. And I calculated that every day that I was at the job, I would make a certain amount of money. I forget how much it was, but it was like I think probably a few hundred. I went to the ATM. I pulled out that amount of money and I put it into an envelope and I put it in my desk. And anytime I wanted to quit, I would pull that envelope out of my desk drawer and like look through the cash and make myself feel better that I had survived one more day. And so that's how I was able to last for 2 years in Big Law. I just knew it wasn't a good fit for me. And all that experience led me to eventually open my solo practice. Didn't work out, but but I think it was a much better fit for me and it helped me figure out like what I enjoy to do.
You just described gym math for me. Like I do the same thing where like if I'm like eating a piece of pizza or something and I'm like, all right, so if I can eat like 3 pieces of pizza, but I go to the gym for X myriad, it's good. It evens out. It balances. We're fine. And that's what you just described, which is it resonates with me for such a different reason because that's why I entice myself and trick myself to go to the gym every day.
Oh, I think this is just early vision board, right? Like I feel like you're just creating a vision board for yourself, which there's no shame in that. That's how we develop the motivation.
I Guys, I think I know how the podcast will eventually end. You're either CC or I are going to try to entice you to join our firms, and it's going to cause. We're going to call it the schism. It's going to be the podcast schism, and I'm just a like Nostradamus here. I think that's how it's going to end, guys. So just a heads up. So Alex, if we get down to it, please.
Alex, I was gonna say you can go to Matt because I. It's not that I don't like you. I just don't. I just don't want to. I like the firm to be contained, and the more employees, it's like more money, more problems, more people, more problems.
Well, that raises a really good point. I kind of wanted to talk about too with you guys. Is are we seeing the rise of true solo practices, or are we seeing the rise of boutique firms? And Cece, you bring up like a really really good point. You're trying to create a practice, a small practice it's your practice. It is you and your partner's firm, and I don't know what I want. Maybe I want to grow to like a very large firm, maybe like a boutique of some kind, or maybe I want to do exactly that, but I don't know. And I'm curious. I'd love to hear from people commenting who will eventually see this podcast. Like, if you've gone solo, how did you make that determination? How did you make the determination you want to be a solo shop or a boutique or something in between? I don't know what's in between. I don't know why I said that, but whatever makes sense. I'd love to hear from our listeners on that topic.
Yeah, me too. And I think it's such a personal question, right? It's like, how do you like to do work? How do you like to manage? If you like to delegate, all of that.
Maybe on that note, tune in. I mean, just comment in, send us a message. Tell us what you think. This is a very interesting topic, and maybe that's where we'll wrap up here today. We always love reading comments and getting messages, so send them to us and let us know what you think.
Thanks,
All right.
guys. See you next
Thanks,
week.
everyone. See y'all next week.